Those of you, I don't know if any of you are dads or stepdads or think you're a dad to somebody, happy Father's Day weekend. So today we're going to talk about the MITRE ATT&CK Framework and how you can implement it into a SOC. For those of you who don't know what a MITRE ATT&CK Framework is, we're going to be going over it. This is kind of the agenda here. And then we're going to talk about Splunk. And if you don't know what Splunk is, I'll briefly touch on that as well. And then there's a specific app inside of Splunk that we're going to be using to implement the ATT&CK Framework. If you guys have any questions throughout the talk, please feel free to interrupt me if I'm going too fast or if it's too salesy and you don't like it, let me know. All right. Who am I? My name is Curtis Smallwood. I'm a security consultant at Aplura. I was an intern there through college, and then I got hired as a real boy, and now I'm a security consultant, and I do Splunk engineering. I graduated from Towson University in 2019 with Matt. He was a semester earlier than I was, though. All right, so real quick, what is the MITRE ATT&CK Framework? The MITRE ATT&CK Framework it's community driven. It's based on real world findings and events. It's going to be things that have happened throughout the world, really, in different environments, and it kind of creates a common language when you're talking about attacks in your environment, when you're like speaking to other professionals, because it gives a common ground. It's comprised of techniques, tactics, and procedures. We're going to dive into those a little bit. I can show you first before we get going. 1 second. So techniques, tactics, and procedures. So we're going to start with tactic. A tactic is, think of it as a goal. It's the goal of the adversary, like what they want to do. So the tactics are going to be right here at the top. These are tactics: privilege escalation, credential access, collection, what have you. And this is kind of a phase, like a step-by-step. They don't use the kill phase that much anymore, kill chain phase, but it's kind of a phase. Now the techniques are going to be all of these underneath. How they achieved the goal, right? So the adversary wants to create persistence, and then how did they do it? They created an account or browser extension, what have you. So then there's procedures. The procedure is the information about the technique, right? So think of it you can have more than one technique per tactic. So say you have, or sorry, the other way around, I mix them up still. So say you want to go to work and stay healthy. I took this from another course. I actually took on this the other day. Those are your tactics, your goals. Technique would be walking. You can walk to work, and you can also walk to stay healthy. So you can have many, as you see here, you can have two different techniques per tactic. So let's see here. Before I talk about Splunk Security Essentials, I want to talk about Splunk in general. Splunk is that's a SIEM, S-I-E-M. You guys know what that is. So you can bring data in. Basically, their motto now is data from everywhere, I think, or turn data into doing. And you can basically bring in data from anything, and you can search it. It's very fast. It's one of the best. It is the best for searching real-time events. I'm going to let you guys go out and learn more about Splunk if you want to. I don't have the time to really dive into that, but you can use apps to include inputs for data, bringing in new data, changing the way it looks, masking credit card numbers, whatever, if you have, sensitive stuff in your data. So the app we're going to be talking about today is called Splunk Security Essentials. It's a free app. Most are free. Some are paid for, or some are subscription based. You get a little bit out of it. But you really kind of got to know what you're doing to utilize it. So there are 4 pillars to the Splunk Security Essentials app. Finding content, which I'll go over, learning, improve production deployments, and you can measure success. Now, this was made by people that work at Splunk in their free time. They don't have to provide this app. It's really awesome. The people that built Splunk are doing this in their free time because they like the industry and want to help. So essentially, this is just a use case library. Now, a use case is kind of it's a problem that a customer would have, or anybody who needs Splunk, and it gives you a roadmap kind of, or assistance in solving that problem. So if you want to look for a basic malware outbreak, that you'll use that use case. And most times there'll be a search involved. You can search your data, they'll provide it, and it will alert you with certain fields and tags that will help you investigate the incident. And this app does incorporate this MITRE ATT&CK Framework. There's another app I'm going to be showing. It's a paid for app, so you have to pay for it, and I don't know how much it costs, but it's not cheap. But they're also implementing it. We won't be using it, their method of implementing the attack framework, but we're going to be using it to view some things. So I'll show you that. So first, let's jump into the Splunk Security Essentials app. This is not it. This is the documentation for it. Hold on. 1 second here. Okay. So this is the homepage for the Splunk Security Essentials app. These are the 4 pillars I was telling you about. This is kind of where you'd start. You can find content. Content is going to be your use cases that they create. What this app does is it pulls use cases from many different apps into one. So you don't have to have 15 different apps to go through and kind of get an idea of what you want to search for in Splunk to help your SOC. It's all here. It's here for you. They put it all together. And by doing that, you can learn things. I'm not going to click on any of these, but we can learn things through here. They'll actually show you how to operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, how to bring in new data, SIM compliance, which kind of gives a baseline of fields you can expect. And then you can measure your success. And we'll briefly go over this, justifying new data sources. Okay. There's 3. I'm giving this talk really from an engineering standpoint. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm kind of just going to show you how I implemented it. Now, as if you were a customer, I would not give you the same exact talk. You would get something a little bit more higher level. But let's dive in. So there's 3 things you got to do. 2 of them you have to do. 1 of them you can do. Now, it starts with data inventory. So it is what it sounds. You create a data inventory. You tell the app where to look for data. So if you have malware data, you have like semantic endpoint, you tell it what index and the source type to look for. You can only give it those 2 fields. You can't give it any other, if you only want to look at one host, you can't. It's only source type and index. I'm going to walk you through these. So the content introspection is going to be compiling all your searches that you have currently running in your environment that you want to map to the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. So if you already have something that's running, say on a cron schedule like every 5 minutes, and it alerts you when it finds malware, now you can pair it to the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, to the tactics and techniques and procedures. And then custom content creation, if you don't find a use case or content that you need, for example, I had a hard time finding a good Linux privilege escalation content, so I created my own, and I mapped it to the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, kind of based on the Windows privilege escalation, because they're kind of similar as far as the goal of the adversary, not the data, obviously. But so you can create your own content. It's very versatile, and nothing's hidden. You can manipulate it any way you want. They give you everything. So let's dive into data inventory. Now, in a normal environment, I would have all of this in different indexes just for ease of searching. Right now I have fake data generating in here, and it's going to be all in the main index, which is not best practice. I just want to put that out there. So you've got all these categories. Does anyone have questions so far, or am I going too fast? I think we're good.
All good.
Okay, cool. So we'll start with authentication. There's 2 subcategories of authentication: successful and failed, obviously. Now, right now I have fake Linux data, like SSH attempts running, and essentially you give it a vendor, which would be Linux, and the product is security, and you tell it what index and what source type to look for. Now, I don't know how many of you, or if you are familiar with Linux logs, but you could have like audit D. The source type would be Linux_audit, and that would be a completely different set of data, and you can map that into like vendor specific data down here. So this is the data inventory page. You like, it is what it is. You go through and you take inventory of your data, and you tell the app where to look. Now for the successful authentication subcategory, these right here are that didn't work, but the MITRE ATT&CK tactics. So again, the goals of the adversary. You can expect to find in this data if you're having live attacks. So you can have privilege escalation, persistence, lateral movement, what have you. And then the techniques are how they carried out those goals, how they achieved them. They still incorporate the kill chain phase, but it's not really used that much as far as I've seen. I'm sure it is still used heavily everywhere else, but or somewhere. But so we've got now I've got some fake malware going, some Cisco SourceFire. I've got web proxy data, I got Blue Coat proxy, antivirus, stuff like that. So I'm running all this in Docker, so it's a little hard to build it like it should be because I don't want to explode my computer, but it is what it is and it works for this talk. So data inventory tells you everything you need to know about the data. It even gives you ways to bring on the data. And again, it tells you all about this MITRE ATT&CK information that you can see. So the next step, remember, is content introspection. And just a reminder, this goes through and grabs all your existing, they're called correlation searches in Splunk, and it puts them all together and maps it to what it thinks is where it fits in the use cases. So we'll go into that next. So content introspection. So I'd like to look for new content. And it goes to every single app on my machine. It goes to the enterprise security app, which is the paid for app. It goes to, you can have user behavior analytics, machine learning toolkit. All of those are apps that you can have with searches in them that have different use cases and help you and your SOC. So we're only going to look at correlation searches. Now, these are some searches I have enabled. So we've got excessive DNS queries. I want to know when some machine is making a whole lot of DNS queries or DNS failures, and this is going to be the use case that it thought fit that search, and it actually tells me the search here. So here's the search I had running. This one is using a data model, which is a little bit, that's for another talk one day, but and it goes out to the excessive DNS failure use case, which we'll look at. This is actually not the best example. One second, hold on. Sorry. Let's try, hold on one second. I want to see something, sorry. Yeah, so I want to get one that's in the app, but anyway, you can go through here and investigate kind of what the use case does and make sure that it fits that search. So this is automated, so it's not going to be right every time. Some of these are wrong. These are right because I mapped them, but sometimes they're wrong and you can change them. So you can go through and say, excessive failed logins, I actually want to change that to brute force. And this will give you a list of all the use cases. So these are from anything with a black logo here is enterprise security. This one is going to be from the Splunk Security Essentials app. This one's user behavior analytics. And it tells you where it's going to search. So it looks at that. Back to the data inventory, it's going to look at authentication successes. I didn't mean to change that. And sure. So, and it goes through and tells you everything it needs to know about that. And what MITRE fields it's going to add in there. Let's see if this one will do it. It doesn't, of course. Anyway, so it goes through and shows those things for you. Now I've got some of these searches running and I have data for them, and we're going to be able to see exactly what is happening behind the scenes here. I want to find a good one for you. I wish it would work. Nope. All right, let's try one more. Sorry. This isn't it. We'll go back. Here's a good one. Okay, so this comes with the Security Essentials app. This is going to be the, for the MITRE ATT&CK tactic, the goal is exfiltration, and it's going to search the web proxy. This one doesn't actually have a technique with it, which is weird, but it's okay. Can't get this bookmark out of my way. Hold on. Go away. Okay. All right, so say we're done. We mapped the searches we wanted. Now, We'll refresh the page, and it'll tell you all these bookmarks are the use cases that I've mapped. So I've got abnormally high number of HTTP methods by source. So there's the search I mapped to it. When this search fires and says, hey, this is happening right now, it's going to tell me this is the initial access tactic, the credentialed access tactic, and these are the techniques that are potentially being used. And then here's something really cool is the threat groups. Threat groups are, I'm sure some of these look familiar to some of you, like app33, oil rig, app29, which actually isn't in that one, but some of them, depending on what company you're at or where you are, say you're an energy company or a financial company, you can actually look at just MITRE ATT&CK tactics that target your company, kind of like your sector, and kind of build out your searches that way. So if you only want to see things that target the energy sector, you can build out your searches that way. Now let's go. We've mapped all this. I've got some of these searches that are fired, so we'll go look at them. So let's see. This is the paid for app I was telling you about. This is a way for analysts to work an event. SOC analysts can say, oh, there's alerts, let's assign it, let's investigate. So we'll go to incident review, which will show us all the events that are happening right now. So for example, I've got this fake data, I've got excessive HTTP failure responses. And you would click on it, as I'm an analyst at this point, and I can go through and see what's happening. So the tactic is initial access and credentialed access. And the technique, so the way they're going to carry out this attack is they're exploiting a public-facing application, and they could be using brute force. Now, the reason this is so great is because you don't have to necessarily be an expert in any of these. You can, be a level 1 SOC analyst, because right here is going to be the description of what to do, or not what to do, but what's happening. And there, it's a lot of information, but you can kind of skim through it and get an idea of what's happening in your environment and figure out where to go next. This is a good way to kind of track kind of where an attacker is. So you would see he's in the initial access and credential access phase, if you will. So he's here and credential right here, right? So they could be in anywhere of these. You'd have to investigate and figure out what it is. And then the technique would be brute force. So they're brute forcing, and then this exploitation. And you can click on these and learn about it. It tells you all about what it is. And then it will tell you the threat groups that go with it and all that. And it's really helpful. The Security Essentials app kind of does that for you as well. So let's go back. I can show you some other ones. So that was just for that. You can look at excessive failed logins. This is going to be credential access and brute force. And again, it tells you what the adversary is potentially doing in your environment. Here's a malware one. Spear phishing, attachment, drive-by compromise. And like I said, you don't have to be an expert in these things, but it brings it all into your SOC. Previously, these weren't here. So I think I can go out here and maybe, here's one. The MITRE ATT&CK stuff's not in this. So you implementing the Splunk Security Essentials app puts that data in here and really helps your analysts get an idea of what's actually happening. So, okay. So I kind of preemptively showed you where all the useful metadata is, but you can go into the incident review app in the, page in the the enterprise security app. You can look at all the correlation searches that are triggering, and you can look at the data that's coming with it. And you setting up the app tags it with the multiple MITRE ATT&CK tactics or techniques that would fit that event, and it helps the analysts. So basically, 1 second here. You can, if you don't have this app, you don't pay for enterprise security, it's still in Splunk. You can still search it. So I created a dashboard. Now this could be something you could put on like an actual, like a monitor in a SOC, and you can look at it on the screen in the corner. So this searches all the tactics and techniques that are in the data right now. It says the last 24 hours, but I didn't have the fake data running for that long, so I changed it to 4 hours, and I started at around 10. but these are going to be the tactics, so the goals of the adversary coming through, like happening live right now. These are the techniques. Excuse me. I have Nessus running in here. We found the spear phishing link, and these are the search names that are triggering. So hosts with multiple infections, a high number of infected hosts, failed HTTP responses, brute force. I kind of overwhelmed it with the brute force data I created earlier. So I kind of messed the graphs up, but it looks good still. And there's lots of pretty colors. And then these drill down. So if I wanted to look at all the spear phishing attachment events, you just click on it and it searches deep dives into the data. And I could see where it came from, the kill chain phase, the name of the search that triggered it. I don't see user in here because it's not doing it, but these are fake IPs. They're the destinations here and all that. So this is where the analyst will go through and deep dive and investigate the event. So let's see what's next here. So some benefits for the SOC. You can identify trends and patterns that the adversary's carrying out in your environment. You can potentially catch somebody early. An abundance of information. This goes back to what I was saying, where you don't have to know everything about what's happening. You get all that information right there at your fingertips in the incident review panel. And that description is also in Splunk if you don't have enterprise security. Security content overview, I'm going to show you that next briefly, and then analytics advisor as well. Let's just go into that really quick. We'll go here. So security content. This is the list of all the use cases from every single app out there. This is only showing all. And of course, it's not going to show anything. 1 second. Oh, great. Okay. Well, this gives me a good time to talk about this security journey. So you have stage 1 through 6. Your basic, you're just looking at brute force logs. Stage 1. Stage 2, you're looking at open ports, things like that. Just it kind of breaks it up. Stage 6 would be an attack happens, you don't even need a SOC analyst, and you have automation, something like Phantom that runs through and investigates it for you and gives you everything it needs. I wish this was working properly. Okay, so this is going to be everything that doesn't come with the Security Essentials app. This is all from ES, it looks like. Just use cases, local account creation. Some of these have the searches with them, things like that. And this would kind of be something an engineer would come through and say, or a manager and say, I want to add these into our environment. Do we have the data, or we have the data, let's add it in. And that's a way you can pair it up to the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. The analytic advisor, this is pretty neat. So say you work in a SOC and you don't have semantic data. You really want semantic data and you're trying to justify a reason to spend the money on it. You can go through here and say, okay, we're going to go through, we're really worried about Magic Hound as a threat group for the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Now, everywhere there's a red dot, or red, looks like a person with a hat, that's where you can see the Magic Hound group, threat group, has gone through an environment and they tag it based on the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. So they've they've done command line interface, they've credential dumping, file deletion, account manipulation. Now, let's say you want to bring in, I forget where semantic falls under, endpoint detection and response. And this is going to show you, once it loads, where you're missing data and where you have data. So currently we have data in the credential dumping stage. And that fits perfectly with endpoint detection response, specifically for the Magic Hound threat group. Now, if you wanted to get registry run keys and startup folder. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but probably something with Windows. You can say, hey, we don't have this because it's not dark blue. So dark blue is we have the data. Light blue is, or I'm sorry, dark blue is we have the data and it's active. I've mapped searches to it. Light blue is we have the data but no searches are mapped to it. And then clear or light blue is we don't have the data yet. We don't have content. So we would need to create searches and bring in the data to fill this out. So you can see our persistence here for this persistence tactic. We don't have a lot of data. We really need to fill that in, right? So this would really help your SOC kind of get an idea of where you are and what you have the ability to search. There's many other things here. There's a whole lot in here. And like I said, this app is free. Splunk is also free. You can install it. It comes with like a 500 megabyte per day license, which is enough to run at home. Okay, so once you get all this installed and set up, what can you expect to do next? You can kind of work with the security journey in your SOC. You can work your way up the security journey, stage 1, 2, 3, and find different use cases for each stage and implement them. And you'll find use cases that you have data for you may not have thought you could use it that way. Correlation searches, this is a little bit deeper for Splunk in general. You can utilize data models. Searching is just a lot faster when you look at data models. It's kind of summary data. It's not like all those raw events. SIM compliance, kind of that, like I said earlier, the baseline of fields you can expect in the data. And then whenever you bring in new data, you want to make sure you put it in the data inventory so you can actually use it and put it to the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Let's see. I could go more into some of these if you like, but I think that's about it that I have. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. I can answer them or show you something else. There's many things you can do with Splunk. So if your goal is to, read about or learn about the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, then this might not be the best use case for like a home network, unless you're getting regularly attacked on your home network, which I really hope not. But there's so many things you can do with Splunk. I have a coworker who smokes meat, and he has a dashboard for like the temperature of his grill in Splunk. So you can do a lot with it, and it's super easy to install at home, and it doesn't have to be, in a distributed environment. There's a lot you can do, and there's so many resources out there that you can do. I have this running in a Docker container. I also have it running on an all-in-one instance on a VM. So it's really a nice tool to have, and I have it running on my laptop as well, and it just reports like things that are failing or stuff like that. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Cool. Total, because we search a couple environments, other teams' data. We're in charge of the security stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's like a Fortune 200 company, though. It's pretty big. So this took me about 2.5 months I got thrown in there, knew nothing about the Splunk Security Essentials app, knew nothing about the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, and used Splunk at Duke. That's cool. Actually, no, I may know someone that helped put it there. Anyway, actually, we were asked to do it is that the electric company, the one in North Carolina or South Carolina, I think? Anyway, yeah, I think we were gonna do that, but we ended up not for some reason. But so yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big company, and I think now that I know a lot, I could do this all in a month. I mean, that data inventory page you saw here is nothing. I've got 60 vendors and products just for authentication or more. I mean, even more. So